and welcome to the Life Well Led podcast, brought to you by Untapped Consulting. On this show, we have conversations aimed at uncovering the art of leadership. Whether you're seeking to lead yourself, your family, your team, or your entire organization, we're here to help explore how to do so in a thoughtful, intentional way. And we're glad you're along for the ride. I am your host, John Elliott. I'm joined by my co-host and eldest son, Grady Elliott. And today we have the privilege of talking with Trent Meacham. Now, that name is likely familiar to many of you who are Illini basketball fans. He played for the Illini 2005 to 2009, after which he graduated and went on to have a successful basketball career overseas. Played in Austria, Germany, France, to name a few of the countries. Since retiring from professional basketball, moved back to Champaign, where he now works in real estate in different capacities and also does some work for the Big Ten Network. That's sort of the Wikipedia version of his intro. On a more personal note, he's been a friend to me for a number of years now. He's been a mentor of sorts to Grady in his basketball journey. Our families really enjoy spending time together. And the best thing I can say about Trent, I can say a lot of good things about him, but the best thing I can say is that he is one of the most thoughtful and intentional dads I know in terms of how he leads his family. That's a real area of emphasis for him and intentionality. And I've been challenged and sharpened by our conversations around that topic and others. And I don't know if it's an overstatement to say that, a big part of the reason I invited Grady to even do this podcast with me, is shaped by conversations I've had with Trent and just his vision of incorporating your kids into the work that you're doing. And so excited to dig into that topic with him today, among others. So without further ado, Trent, thanks so much for being on the show.
John, appreciate that intro. Great to be on here. Great that you got Grady here too. So good to see you guys. And glad we can do this.
All right. Well, we're not going to spend the whole interview talking about basketball. I know you already do plenty of that. But you are on here with a couple of basketball junkies. So Grady wanted to kick things off with a basketball question. So Grady, fire away.
Yeah, so obviously basketball has been a big part of your life. Growing up, you played around here, but then after college, you moved and played overseas. So one thing I was curious about was, what were some of the main differences that you noticed between the style of play here and the style of play overseas?
That's a great question. And I think it's more than just a style play, but getting to spend nearly a decade overseas. There's a lot of differences. And one, I got to really see how they do it at a younger level, because there's no school sports outside of America for the most part. Pretty much around the world, any sport, there's not really school sports. So you have clubs, professional clubs that have development programs at younger ages. So, for example, Victor Wembanyama, for a decade, he was with the club called Nanterre that I played for 2 years. So he was a part of that team growing up when he was younger, before he became a pro. So you kind of get a taste of that. And pretty much every season, we would have younger guys practice with us. They may not play, or they might dress, they might play very little, but they would practice with us for a portion of the week. So you get to rub shoulders, you get to, be around some of the younger people. And so you get a decent taste of what it's like at the youth developmental levels. And I'd say the biggest difference, especially at the younger levels, and I'll go on, would be their focus is on development, not on winning games. Mm-hmm. So they want to develop players, and this has improved maybe a little bit in the U.S., but if you take the sport of basketball, typically if you have a big kid now, it's easy to dominate. You can stick him under the basket, and he can just get rebounds after rebounds and score over the smaller opponents. In Europe and most other countries, they'll want to develop that kid's whole entire skill set. And therefore, that might not be as advantageous for them winning the basketball game, but that kid is getting better over time, I think that'll help you. So there's a focus on development. I think they play fewer games and they practice more. And I would say the average kid is probably a bit more mature, like you, Grady. You're a mature kid, and that's a compliment. So I just say on average, I'd say, yeah, they're probably a bit more mature. But there's the culture. You can't disassociate, a sport like basketball from the culture. And I spent my time in Europe. Soccer is such a big part of that culture. And so what is rewarded in the game of soccer is teamwork, skill, spacing, creativity. So then you see that play out on the basketball court where you can't do it one-on-one. In soccer, you have to be able to use teammates. You have to understand angles and spacing. So then that becomes evident on the basketball court because all those kids grew up playing soccer. So I think the American culture, too, is a little bit more of an individual pursuit just in general. And so I think that plays out in the game of basketball, for example. So, and that's not all bad either. I think that's part of the game, but there is more of a team, I think, just mentality at the younger ages, and that continues as you get older. And that would be probably some of the biggest differences. And there's some specifics of the rules. There's a 24-second shot clock when you're 12 years old in Europe.
Really?
And I think that actually helps players develop at a quicker rate because you have to make more decisions, you get more reps, more opportunities. So there's a number of things that are different, and there's probably some good, some bad on both sides.
Interesting. So I didn't realize you were a part of the same club that Victor was for a time. Not that he was a big deal back when you were playing. He was young, but do you think there was ever a time where you guys were in the same gym together?
I think he's a little bit too much younger than me, how old he is for us to brush shoulders like that. But, there's a number of NBA players, in France that I caught before they came over to the U.S., whether that was Rudy Gobert or Evan Fournier or Clint Capella. There's every year France produces some NBA guys, and so they were younger playing when I was there. But that's how it is everywhere. And those kids, and here's what they'll do is they'll practice up, whether it's a 16-year-old playing with the pros, they'll practice maybe for 2 or 3 days a week, but then they'll go and play with their age group. And again, that's for that team would be better off if their main players were practicing with them all week. But in Europe, they typically will have them practice with the pros or with an older age group. I talked to Kasparas Giacochonis about this, and he said last year at Barcelona, he's playing on one of the biggest clubs in the world outside the NBA. He's practicing against Ricky Rubio, Thomas Satoransky, Jabari Parker. I mean, guys that have played a long time in the NBA. That's who he's practicing against 3 days a week. Now, he barely played on the A club. He didn't really play much. He had a little bit of action here and there. He played with more his age group, but he got that experience practicing with those guys, and that's huge. And that's just something that you don't see here for probably different reasons. But coaches want to win. They want to win the 4th grade championship. They want to get the medal. They want to, the kids want to do that, and they want to take the pictures and feel good about themselves. And it's just a different approach. And I tend to, appreciate and respect what they're doing over there. In many ways, maybe more so than what I'm starting to see over here. As my kids are younger, so we're not quite all the way into it yet.
So you're saying if we cut you open, you, from a basketball standpoint, you bleed a little bit more European than American at this point.
Oh, there's no doubt. And maybe I'm biased because that's my most recent experiences playing, and I became a better pro than I was a college player, and so that's more of a recency bias and where I really enjoyed it. And also, I for example, I had a former coach my first year in Austria. He was our youth coach. This is not a good league, not a good team, but he used to work out some of the younger players beforehand. I jump into the gym with him. It was myself and a couple of 15-year-olds, my first year after college. Again, awful facilities, everything. But this coach was really good. So I worked with him. Well, he went on, and he became the G League Coach of the Year one year. He's gone on. He's coached for a big club in Lithuania. I'm drawing a blank on the name now, Kaunas. And so he's coached at a high level. And what he's told me is that he's seen it in the U.S., he's seen it in Europe, in different countries, that they have the best development, youth through your early college years in Europe. He would take that. Now, on the flip side, he thinks the NBA is by far superior to the development as you become a pro. And that's probably because the focus on winning shifts there professionally, where in Europe it probably means more. And in the NBA, there's probably more of a focus on, unless you're at that championship level, you're talking about developing your guys, positioning yourselves to create a team that could compete in subsequent years. But in Europe, it's more of a win now mentality as a pro. So they're focused on winning games maybe more than development. So it kind of flips professionally, at least in his opinion.
Interesting.
If that makes sense.
Interesting. Well, Grady, if I'm hearing Trent right, we're going to need to send you to a boarding school in France. So let's make a note to discuss that offline here.
Well, yeah, that part where you said about like the soccer kind of having a role in the basketball, like the European players that I've like actually studied and watched would be like Luka and Kasparas Jagiellonis and Tomislav Ivicic. Like I think is a clear difference between them and other players. Like their passing is definitely on another level, and like Kasparas is very different from a normal American point guard. He doesn't have all the flashy moves, all the nice step backs. I mean, he does have a nice step back, but like all those moves that will be put on highlights and everything. But he's really good in fundamentals, really good at just keeping the ball handle tight and passing. So that really makes sense to me.
Yeah, and a lot of these European guys aren't as athletically gifted, say for someone like Giannis. And so if you watch the NBA and the guys are just so good athletically, most of us, mere mortals, even great athletes, can't relate and can't, maybe learn from that. So the guys that are maybe a bit more average, now they're still great athletes, are probably better guys to study as well, just how they see the game. Not just how they play, but how they see the game, I think, is different. The spacing, the angles, seeing plays happen ahead of time. So those would be great guys to watch.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned Luka, Grady, obviously Joker's another. To see guys who are clearly not as athletic completely dominate games, with their basketball intellect, with their movement, with their passing, with, some of those other pieces, I think that's a lot more fun to watch than just, no offense to Giannis, but we understand what that is. But when you can dominate without that, I don't know. I think it's a lot of fun. All right, we're going to come back to the youth sports thing because I want to dig in more there. But before we leave Europe, I want to zoom in on that period of time in your life, but maybe not so much the basketball part, but more the family part, because I think it's worth noting you got married just before you began your overseas career. Am I right about that?
That's right.
So you're newlyweds, you married to Teresa in Austria, and then you actually start your family while you're over there playing. I wondered if you could talk a little bit about what that was like to start a marriage, start a family, while trying to figure out new cultures and a new kind of game. And maybe the second part of that question, how did that experience sort of shape your views and understandings of how, your professional life and your family life could maybe be merged in ways that, that the conventional American may not think about?
Oh, man, John, great questions. There's a lot there. Yeah, we got married right out of school. Teresa had just turned 21. She'd only been in school for 3 years. She had graduated. She probably would have every record at St. Louis University basketball if she would have played her 4th year. But I whisked her away. We got married, went to Europe. We had done long distance in less than 2 years of dating. So we had never lived in the same city. And now we got married 2 weeks later. We're off to a small town in Austria. Not, your picturesque honeymoon by any means. I was making hardly any money, questioning what did I just do to this poor girl. But that definitely it pulls you together when you kind of go through. It wasn't all adversity because there's some great things about it. But man, you all of a sudden we're in a different place, foreign country, foreign language. We don't know anybody. And that definitely strengthened our bond there early on. And for me, I always dreamed of, I always was looking forward to getting married and having a family and that. And so there was never any question of like, what are we like? We're gonna find a way to make this work. And it was an experience, and it probably took us a couple years, at least 2 or 3 years, to go from just kind of getting through some of the inconveniences and differences of living in a different culture to really enjoying it, embracing it, making the most of it. Now, Teresa will say our time in Europe, the highs were a little bit higher, the lows were a little bit lower. And there's probably some truth to that, just being far away from your comfort zone, from your family. Now, we learned a lot in that time. And I think over the years, we only enjoyed it more and more. And I only enjoyed playing more and more. And it was a really good lesson to me is when you appreciate like what you have going on, you tend to perform better, just do better and have a better outlook. And that was true for me on the basketball court. But it was a great experience for a young married couple. And even in terms of having kids, John, you asked, we tried for years to have kids and we couldn't. And then we get pregnant, we have twins, and that was a whole nother experience, having twins in a foreign country, and through a challenging pregnancy that saw my wife in the hospital for most of that my twins were both in the NICU, one for 2 months, and then bam, my season started and I'm on the road. So you learn a lot, one, getting married as a young man and not really having others to lean on like you're used to and out of your comfort zone, and then becoming a dad, and now a dad times 2 without much support system in many ways overseas. And it really strengthened Teresa and I's bond even more, I'd say, in our marriage and kind of who we are as a family, but also in terms of just a sense of like togetherness, like what we do, we're together.
Yeah.
I think it helped too that Teresa was a basketball player. She was an athlete. She understands it. And even when she stopped playing basketball, now she played our first year overseas, she played professionally too. And she just happened to be MVP of the league. I should have been following her around. Maybe we'd have some more money in the bank account if that was the case.
I'm glad she's not here right now, because every time I've heard you mention that, she quickly shuts you down and blah, blah, blah. But you've got free reign to brag on her.
Yeah, she could really play. But I think for us, basketball was something that she knew and that we felt like we were really in it together.
Yeah.
And she just enjoyed having teammates over for dinner. She enjoyed coming to the gym, and she'd rebound for me, before, after practice, and we'd talk. And that was like, those are some of my favorite memories from playing, just being with her in the gym, and, my teammates are around. And then my kids were pretty young. Obviously, they were very young. My last year playing, they were 1.5 years, but her bringing them up to the gym, and it looked a little bit different at that point. She wasn't as good of a rebounder, but bringing them up and just doing that, you felt like we're doing this together. Her coming to the games, that's not easy to bring 2 1-year-olds to a game, and nothing sweeter than being on the court and looking over there and seeing your wife and your 2 kids, and doesn't matter how the game went, you feel like you're winning no matter what. So some of the best memories of playing was just doing that with her, and then welcoming 2 kids was really special.
Yeah. I know since you've been back, and I guess just for the listeners, you retired, I think, officially for the last time in 2017.
There was a couple retirements, 2018, 2017. Yeah.
So it's, it's been a number of years back here in the States, and specifically in Champaign-Urbana. And I know how formative those experiences were for you with Teresa, with your young kids overseas. And it's sort of been a journey to figure out, okay, what's the new version of that? What's the new version of, my wife and kids are coming to the gym, rebounding for me at the games, because it's different, right? You're not playing basketball anymore. You're doing some other professional things. So can you maybe give us a little window into what that sort of integration looks like for you right now, and maybe even some of the things that you're just currently sort of experimenting with on that front?
Well, I'm learning, and somebody once told me, this is an older guy that's had some success, and he's like, try to limit the life changes, if you can, to like one at a time. If you can just go through one major life change at a time. And for me, it was like, well, kids is a pretty big life change, and that for me, that was 2 at once, and then we had a third not too far after. where you're living, your location. That was like going to different countries, different cultures. That was a big one. And then career, I played basketball for a long time, from when I was a young kid, you're pursuing this thing. So there's three major changes for me. You can't just, that were massive. And I've learned a lot. I'm still learning a lot. And specifically, John, on what that looks like now with a family and in my career. You said the word integrate, and I think that's really the word that I want to live out. How can I integrate my family with life, work, family, fatherhood, marriage? And I'm learning. It's different at different stages. Obviously, different jobs can allow for different things, but it's a big reason why I'm in real estate now, because of the flexibility that I have and the ability to do my own thing. Is I can bring a kid on a appointment with me to see a house. It's a tangible thing that we can talk about, that they can learn about. And look, they're doing stuff. It's not like they're following me around everywhere. But I heard someone say, like, best piece of advice for a parent is like, bring a kid with you wherever you go. And that's not always possible. But is it an errand to the store? Is it an appointment? Can I bring one of them with me? Now, I have one kid, Andrew. He always wants to. He's always down for it.
Oh, really?
Some others aren't always that case, but that's where life happens. And so, as much as we can be side by side, I want to make that happen. There's a scripture in Deuteronomy 6, and it's kind of after this famous, more like Moses just gives the 10 Commandments, and he talks about, impress these on your children, when you lie down, when you get up, when you walk along the road, just like. So how much can I bring my kids into what I'm doing, bring Teresa into what I'm doing? I'm working on that. And sometimes it's little things. Sometimes, I'm doing some homework for some of my broadcasting work, and that's kind of easy. Let's check out what are you seeing in this game, and
yeah.
We can have some chatter about that. Sometimes it's talking about, it could be a win that I had in business. It could be a loss, and just kind of sharing with them, I think, is a big thing. Just sharing and then bringing them along however I can, because it's easy to outsource everything as a parent. Outsource education, outsource spiritual development, outsource coaching, and there's a lot of good things there. But I want to do that. These are the people I care most about, and I want to do as much of life as possible with them along the way. So I'm learning and trying to do that as much as possible.
Yeah. Well, like I said at the opening, I feel like that's an area where you're learning, but I'm learning from you and with you, and I know that's we've enjoyed having conversations around that topic of work-life integration over balance, right? Which is where we both kind of lean and look forward to.
So I think it's awesome. Yeah, that Grady's here with you. I mean, I know he should be in school, but I think this is great. And however much or little he's involved, and it's just being at the table is so valuable. Yeah. So much more valuable than sitting in a classroom right now with all your peers, and who knows what you could be doing. And of course, there's some good in that too, but I think it's great that you're here with us.
Yeah. Yeah. No shade on our band in middle school, but I totally agree. All right, let's go back to the youth sports topic. That's another one that we like to discuss.
Weighty topic.
Grady's, of course, right in the thick of his journey with youth sports, and has had some different experiences in both travel baseball and travel basketball, and some local leagues and so forth. So here's the way I want to put it to you, Trent. As you think about the trends you're observing there, give us just one trend that concerns you and one trend that encourages you in that space.
Okay, this is going to sound like it's most when we think of like good things, there's typically a bad side. So I'm going to start with the good. Okay. And Right now, there is more opportunities than ever, and that's great. There's more opportunities, I think, for high-level coaching. There's more Instagram and YouTube accounts that teach, skills from all different sports that people can watch and learn from, and that's great. And there's more opportunities to play, programs to be a part of, and this goes across all sports, that you can get involved, that you can have high-level coaching, that you can experience different levels of ability no matter where you're at, and there's a ton of opportunity. And I think that's a real positive. But there's a flip side to that, and what's the cost? Okay, of all these opportunities, and are you saying yes to every opportunity? What does that mean for that individual kid? Is he going to get burned out at 15 years old when that should be when he's really coming into his own and making it his own and taking it to the next level? What does that mean for the family? They have one kid. Well, maybe it doesn't mean as much, but then is everything revolved around that one kid? You have 5 kids. I have 4 kids. It looks different. So what is that opportunity taken away from? Is it taken away from family dinners and you never have a family dinner? I do know every kid is different. Every family is different. Our priorities can be different, but I think the opportunities out there are great. And there's some really positive things about that, but you always have to count then what are you missing out on? And is it worth it? Is it really taken away from things that are more important?
Yeah. Grady, I'm curious to hear what you would say here. I mean, I look at this through the lens of a parent, but you're right in the heart of that as a participant playing on different teams.
Mm-hmm.
As you hear Trent talk there, where does your mind go?
Well, you talked about getting burnt out, and I have some experience in that. I played baseball growing up, like ages 4 to 10, but after my 10th travel baseball season, I was just like, I need a break from this. And so I took a year off and then ended up coming back in 12U after just a complete year of no baseball and played one more travel season. But then after that, I just was like, no, I'm done with baseball. But that was when I started to realize that I really like basketball. But I've been trying to be careful with that. Like I'll do a school season and I'll tell my parents like, all right, I would like a 2-week break here where I'll play golf or not even play any sports. Like I think there's an importance of like taking breaks here and there to make sure that you're not getting too overwhelmed or like you said, burnt out of a sport.
That's good. Yeah, I think, and you always got to be taking inventory. I think the hard thing is, you want to push yourself. And I think about this with young kids. Like I want to challenge and push my kids, but what's the limit? What does that look like at 8 years old, at 10 years old, at 15 years old? And that sport is never the most important thing. So how can that just be something that you're pursuing? If you have something that you really love and you're pursuing it, you're working hard at it, everything's not going to be fun. You work through things, that's great, but it can never be the main thing and the most important thing. And just can you use all the work that comes with that to grow as a person and to develop? And it's not always easy to know, but it seems like you're on a good path with that.
Well, one of the ideas that's been sticky for me with respect to youth sports and burnout is actually a comment or a principle that I think came from your father-in-law, Teresa's dad, where his philosophy, if I understand it right, was to always leave them wanting a little more. So in terms of the training, coaching, support he offered, he'd rather have them to stop a little bit short of saturation and have them, I'm kind of hungry for the next workout, the next run, whatever it is, rather than, we gave them a little extra. And I think that resonated with me. I think there's wisdom in that. And I think about something I heard David Pollack say on a podcast, maybe that you sent to me, Trent, where he talks about how true joy for the sport is actually a competitive advantage in high school, because so many of these kids are getting burned out, like frankly Grady did with baseball. And so by the time they're 15, 16, 17, it's a chore, right? And so to actually still be hungry and enjoying the sport in those high school years, it's not just healthy, but there's actually a competitive advantage to be found there because you're going to want to put in the work, in a way that someone who's just been totally burnt out on it doesn't want to.
Well, and I would say that even the farther up you go, there's oftentimes less joy. It becomes, it is a big business now in college. It's when I was playing professionally, that's what's feeding my family. So there's more pressure.
Yeah.
But you'll see that more and more as you go, that there's fewer people that probably enjoy it. And John, I know you like the book, The Infinite Game. And just like anything, it's just a matter of, if you can stay in the game, you're going to be all right. And so if you're still like, and I think in sports, it looks like if you're still like, putting in the work and enjoying that, and you're able to compound over years and years, well, it doesn't really matter where you're at 10 years old or even 15 years old, heck, even 18 years old. Like, it's just like, are you still enjoying it? Are you still improving? Are you still working at it? And that you'll start passing up, you'll pass up all the guys that are better than you when you're younger. If you can just stay with it, because there's few people that are going to really stay with it. And eventually, and you have a lot of different things, maturity and different things, but that's a huge thing, just being able to stay in the game. And you do that by, I think a big part of it is enjoying the process,
Yeah. Yeah. There's a moment that sticks out to me on the travel baseball journey where, I underestimated just how all consuming that world could be. And to be clear, there were a lot of really good things about it. I mean, we made some great relationships, made some great memories. So, but I think that's part of what was disorienting. There was a lot of good things we were experiencing in it, but it was just it was so much. And I remember having this big internal struggle with Janelle over like, gosh, what should we do about this? Should we keep doing it? We kind of felt obligated to. And I'll never forget, we finally just said, oh, well, we should just ask Grady. And as a 10-year-old, he said, yeah, I like baseball, but not this much. And there was a moment there where our 10-year-old was able to speak wisdom and clarity into a situation where Janelle and I were struggling to kind of find our bearings. And so I think sometimes just paying attention to what your kids are telling you and showing you there can reveal a lot as well. So we'll have you back on in a few years. I know your kids are just, getting into all this, and you're at the front edge of making those decisions. So I'm very curious to kind of hear how your thoughts evolve there as you become less just an observer and more of a kind of a participant in that world. All right. We've got one final question for you. Grady, take us home.
Yep. So I'm 14 right now, about to start high school, entering that new journey. So I was wondering if you could go back to when you were 14, what was some advice that you would give your 14-year-old self? And it could be sports wise, it could be just life in general. What was something that you wish you had done differently there?
It's a great question, Grady. This is probably kind of a cliche answer, so I apologize, but it's hard to say one thing. But I would say to be humble and hungry. You probably heard that before, kind of like humble and hungry.
I have a shirt that says humble, hungry.
And when I think of humility, it's not, everybody knows the C.S. Lewis quote. It's not like thinking like I'm not good enough or I'm less than, but just understand, hey, this is not all about me, because that's easy to do at any age, but I think especially when you're younger, maybe, and at 39 too, like myself. But it's not all about you. And also with humility, like to be coachable, to really be coachable. I don't know, most of us don't like to be coached, but to be willing to be coached. I think if that's really important. And then I'd say hungry, especially like to take on the challenge. There's like in basketball, like, no, I want to guard the best player. Like I want this challenge. I want the opponent's best shot. Like that's how you're going to get better. So to be hungry, not to everybody is hungry for more. Like I want more points. I want more success. I want more money, John. But like to really be hungry, like I want this challenge because that's how I'm going to grow. And this other stuff will come, right? So, be coachable, understand it's not all about you, but man, just seek out those challenges. They happen. That's what's great about sports. They happen all the time. Like, every day in practice, you could be by yourself in the gym and there's challenges to embrace right there. In practice, going up against different guys, and there's ways to challenge yourself. So I'd say, man, embrace those, seek those out, kind of cherish those. Hard is good. And if you're doing those things, man, that's going to compound over time.
If I could ask a quick follow-up there, thinking about 14-year-old Trent, who I didn't know at the time, you think that person needed more work on the humble side or the hungry side of that equation?
That's a great question. And I don't know. I would say both for sure. But I would really caution you too of the humble side is not thinking you're not good enough. I'd say another thing for myself is, really to believe even more in your abilities, and especially if you work at it, that not to limit yourself. You look at the highest level of anything, business, athletics, there's probably guys out there that don't have the talent, that don't have some of the things that, we might possess, that are doing things at the highest level because maybe they've had some good breaks, but they believed in themselves. They've stuck with it. They've kept at it. So don't limit yourself either.
I remember you told me once, Trent, that one of the greatest advantages that kids of professional athletes have, on top of some good genes, obviously, but because their mom or dad played a sport at a high level, they grow up thinking that's normal.
Yeah.
Right. And so they just sort of expect to compete and perform at a high level. And there's a mindset component there where if you think like that, there's a better chance you'll perform like that. And I hear elements of that in what you're saying now.
And I think that what's normalized for them is not just I'm scoring 30 points a night. It's normal to be the best player in my city. It's normal to be the best player in my state. No, but also what's normalized is the work, that they understand, hey, what goes into it so that you do have that success on the court or field or whatever it is. I think that work is normalized. I thought I worked hard. And I did for a high school athlete. But then when I got to college, I realized, no, there's another level that I have not pushed myself or I have not been pushed. So I think that sometimes those kids, that next generation, they understand that there's levels to it. There's levels to how hard you can push yourself and how good you can be even at a younger age.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. All right. Before we let you go here, let the audience know where they can find you. I know you've got some different real estate things going on. You've had newsletter, podcast stuff in the past. So where, if people liked what they heard and want more Trent Meacham in their life, where should they go?
Best place is, Facebook or social media at Trent Meacham. I have a website, trentmeacham.com. That's my email too, trent@trentmeacham.com. Hit me up. And yeah, real estate's my primary focus. So you can find me there and look forward to interacting with whoever you got. Appreciate you guys having me on.
Well, it's been great to have you. And I always enjoy our conversations. So it was fun to let some other folks listen in this time, and look forward to continuing to learn from you and learn with you in the years ahead.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.